it going, everybody? This is Tom Driver. I hope you're having another great day, and welcome back to another video. Alright folks, well, I've really hesitated on making this video for quite some time. I know a lot of you have asked me about this in the comments. I said that this was my worst overall job experience, but the strength of it was starting to become a little bit too strong for me, so it's time for me to tell all. This is my overall experience at Stop & Shop. As I have mentioned before, this was my very first retail job that I had during my last years in high school when I was in Kinnelon, New Jersey, and obviously, as I have said before, being a car attendant there, it was probably the worst job experience that I have ever had. Obviously, it would be equal to Walmart, but still, up until then, this was my worst overall experience, and I'm going to share a little bit about that with you here in this video. Now again, this was at the Stop & Shop in Kinnelon, which was actually a few minutes walks from Kinnelon High School. There were days where I could just walk straight from Kinnelon High School all the way to the Stop & Shop there in Kinnelon, and obviously there's usually a lot going on there during the weekends and sometimes during the evenings as well, even at times when they're not busy, but still, as I said before, there were moments that I can recall from that job experience that up until the Walmart experience, I really do not want to go through again. Now, how I got this job was a little bit difficult to explain. Now, obviously, I had just finished up with my final season playing football as a senior there at the Kinnelon Colts, and obviously I did have a lot of fun there, and my original plan was to play lacrosse again during the spring. However, my mom was trying to put me into a job during this time, and obviously she was trying to put her central focus on making sure that I had a job during this time. But obviously, as we all know, I was having a lot of problems with trying to find a job, and at this point my focus was just trying to get through the rest of high school, and lacrosse was obviously, I just wanted to have at least one more season on there because I have fallen so much in love with that sport that I just really wanted one more season with it. But at this point my mom had gotten in touch with the owners and the bosses there at the Stop & Shop in Kinnelon, and at this point they had me in for an interview and made me apply for the car attendant position with the promise that I would end up getting moved into the inside the store where I would ultimately work on stocking or a cashier. I don't recall exactly what it was later on. That unfortunately never happened, but I'll tell a little bit about that in just a little bit. But obviously, my mom got me in for an interview there. I did the application, and unfortunately, my hopes of playing lacrosse that season came to an end. Honestly, I really wish I would have played lacrosse that season, and I wish that there would have been a way to be able to work that out so that way I can work that job while playing it. However, my mom said that if I revealed that I was trying to play lacrosse, I wouldn't have gotten a job. To be honest with you though, knowing now exactly how it would have went, I wish I would have just told them straight up that I wanted to play lacrosse, because I'm going to be honest with you, as I said before, it was just a miserable experience, as I'm going to explain to you a little bit. But overall, in case you're wondering how I ended up getting this job, I was basically forced into it. And yeah, the job itself as a car attendant is probably at the very bottom of the food chain. As I have said multiple times before, obviously you're just outside for 4 to 8 hours a day, depending on whether you're part-time or full-time, and obviously your goal is to just push as many carts as possible back to the store. Now obviously a lot of customers there, they'll usually take a cart or two to really go do their shopping, and chances are there's usually about at least 2 or 3 areas where they will usually stock all the carts there when they are done. So obviously, as the cart attendant, my job is to go up there and ultimately take them out and bring them back to the store. Usually I would have this device where I would ring up as many as 5 or 6, maybe even more carts, and obviously it would make it a little bit easier, but at the same time, the more carts that I actually had on that device, the harder it is for me to be able to control all those carts, because then, you know, there are times where, especially like if it's really windy, obviously sometimes some of the carts would start getting a little loose or risk going away, something like that, and then there are times where there's just so many that sometimes it's just very hard for me to be able to push them down without really stressing my back and all that stuff. And so obviously, you know, even though it allows you to be able to put in more carts than you can, unfortunately though, it still can create a whole lot of problems. And as I said before, it's usually just the amount of people that would usually be taking all those carts, and usually there's quite a bit of them, and so sometimes, you know, there's at least like 2 or 3 full hours where you're basically just having to go back up to the parking lot and then all the way back to the store, where you have to go up there, get all those carts, and then ultimately just bring them back to the store without any sort of rest whatsoever. And trust me, that was exactly what it felt like, you know. Unfortunately, because of the amount of times that it just got me like tired and frustrated really quick, and because of that, you know, it just really became very hard for me to be able to do the job efficiently. Not only that, there were actually 2 lots. There was one on one side and then there was one all the way on the other end. So usually if they see that there's not not a whole lot going on in one end, they would have to take me all the way over to the other lot where they would have me take over all the carts from there on that end and then bring them back to the store. And that only just brought a whole lot more stress and a whole lot more work on my body that I really didn't need. Trust me, if it was just one lot, I probably would have been alright, but 2 lots, that's when it really became a big problem. And because of all the carts that I have to take, sometimes you just have to be very, very careful. And unfortunately, that was exactly what I was having to do quite a lot, unfortunately. And unfortunately, there was one time as a result where I was trying to take in so many carts that one of the carts ended up coming loose and literally ended up scratching the door of one of the cars that was there. And because of that, I ended up getting in big trouble as a result of that. Fortunately, I wasn't entirely reprimanded, but still, that was a very traumatizing incident, unfortunately, and because of that, I just felt like that, like, this was the immediate sign that I just was not going to enjoy this job. And yeah, I mean, it was just miserable because, because of all the cars that are there, along with all the cars in there, you're just basically having to be very, very careful. And unfortunately, there are times where if you're just not careful, you're going to have incidents like that. And fortunately, that was the one time where something like that had happened. But trust me, there were so many other times where I was doing stuff like this where I literally could have ended up getting into that situation. But still, unfortunately, that's the life of the car attendant. The other thing was the overall environment. As I said before, this was obviously an outdoor job, and because of that, you had to deal with a lot of grueling conditions, and there were times where, it was like very cold and chilly, and in which I had to dress up in a whole bunch of heavy clothing, and sometimes, as well, it would be snowing during those times as well, so sometimes it would just make it a whole lot more difficult for me to be able to get all the carts back to the store without being blinded by all the snow that's falling. There are also days where it will be raining pretty heavily as well, and maybe 1 or 2 days there will usually be like a heavy thunderstorm. Now, because Kinnelon is in an area where usually it has quite a large amount of rainfall whenever it is raining, it is unfortunately an area where if it does rain, it can come down pretty fast and really heavy. And because of that, there were moments where I just could not get out there without risking getting myself wet because it would just be heavy rainfall way for like several minutes. And because of that, I would just get drenched and soggy and tired as a result. And obviously, there are days where if it's very sunny, unfortunately, and also very hot, unfortunately, that makes it even worse because usually during those days, it would be like very, very grueling, You obviously have to be out there in short sleeves, obviously, but at the same time, it would be very hot. You would get very sweaty and very tired very easily because of all the pushing. Trust me, you may be able to get away with that during the cold when you're doing all of this, but during the summer, when it's very hot, trust me, you get exhausted very easily. And because of that, that plays a real reason as to why I really hated doing work outdoors, especially in jobs like this. Because if you're having to deal with all of these conditions, unfortunately, it's going to make it very, very tough for you to be able to really do your job efficiently. And because of all the changing weather conditions that was going on during the short time that I was there, unfortunately, it just brought a whole lot of extra misery to this job that I just really didn't want. The other thing as well, they really mix up your schedule quite a bit. Because of that, obviously, since I was part-time, obviously I was just doing 4 hours a day, which obviously is pretty efficient and all that stuff, but still, at the same time, it just depends on all the work. If you were doing 8 hours a day, then trust me, it would be very miserable. But 4 hours a day, usually that would be enough. But most of the time, it would have to be during the weekdays, because during the weekends on Saturdays and Sundays, when it was at its busiest, trust me, a lot of the carts are going to be used, and trust me, those are the days where you're really going to have to put in a lot of work, and those were the days that I just was not looking forward to. Then there are most of my colleagues. Now, most of the lower staff, they were alright. I never really spoke to most of them, obviously, because most of them usually worked indoors, Obviously, some of them will be working the cashier, some of them will be doing stocking and all that stuff. And usually, just most of the time, a lot of the other people that were working down there, in fact, there's usually like a pizza store and then maybe like a couple other areas down there. Usually, some of those people would just be hanging out there. There was this one guy that I worked with as a car attendant that was just very weird and at the same time kind of creeped me out just a little bit, He obviously would be wearing a lot of heavy clothing, even during the warm days, during the time that I was a car attendant, that would just be repeating literally just the same exact stuff over and over again. And while I did enjoy working with the guy, obviously I just felt like that, like the fact that he was continuously repeating all of this stuff, it kind of drove my mind crazy just a little bit. And then obviously there's the management part, Obviously my mom and then the fourth husband that she was married to, they said that they were people that were going to help me out. That was not the case, unfortunately, The thing is that, if you're in management, if you're going to be hiring cart attendants, you need to be there to help them with being able to get a job done efficiently and make sure that, they're doing everything right. Unfortunately, I just felt like that I was completely lost out there, and because of that, I just felt like that management was not really there to help me out. It's just like with Walmart, unfortunately, obviously they have a whole lot of stuff going on that they have to worry about, but still, I just feel like that, like whenever I was needing something, I just felt ignored sometimes. And unfortunately, whenever I was trying to ask for help in regards to something, they would usually just tell me to you're on your own, something like that. I mean, yeah, obviously once I figured it out, I was on my own to really figure out all this stuff. But what happens if I get into, something that I really need help with, or maybe there's just some sort of problem that I have? Unfortunately, I just felt like that there weren't that many options with them for them to be able to help me out with that. And unfortunately, it just made it a whole lot worse. Yeah, look, I know obviously management has a lot going on, but still, your junior staff, they try to help the store succeed, and if you're not going to care about them, it's really going to be a much bigger problem for your store. Unfortunately, just like with Walmart, that's exactly what I was dealing with there at the Stop and Shop in Kinnelon. I just felt like that, they weren't really helping me to be able to get what I need to be able to do this job. And unfortunately, as a result, as I said before, they promised me that they would move me indoors. That never happened, and unfortunately I just felt like that I was conned in this job. And yeah, finally there were just days where, if there was not a whole lot going on, and usually there was one other person in it a lot, there's just basically days where you're just waiting to see if there were more than 5 or 6 carts that were taken before you go up there and bring them back to the store. And obviously, because of that, there were days where, it just felt like that, it was just sitting there just waiting to see what was going on. And yeah, those days of boringness, it obviously was just not fun. So yeah, it just felt very miserable there at Stop and Shop. It was a job that I just simply didn't want to be in, and unfortunately being at the bottom of the food chain, I just felt like that I was basically left on my own. And just considering that all the conditions that I absolutely had to go through during that time, it just made the job a whole lot more miserable. Now, I was only there for about 5 months. In case you're wondering how I left there, it was after my high school graduation in June. After I graduated, obviously I moved out of my mom's house and moved in with my dad in Springfield, and because of the heavy distance that was going on between Springfield and Kinnelon, obviously since I did not have a car yet at that time, nor did I have a license, I unfortunately could not go there to Kinnelon anymore to continue doing this job, because my dad would always be at work, and then my stepmom would obviously do a whole lot of other things that were going on at the house. And so unfortunately I had to give my notice to leave there, and obviously my very last day there was the week that I finished high school there in Kinnelon. But I'll be honest with you, I was pretty relieved to finally be out of there, because trust me, after what I went through, I did not want to go there anymore. Obviously that's life as a cart attendant. Most of the time this is going to be your first job if you're trying to get into the workplace industry, and as I said before, this is the worst job that you could possibly have. I remember making a video a couple years ago in regards to why you should never be a cart attendant. The reason why I'm saying this is because I've been there. I went through that, and trust me, it was not fun. If you really want to know what I'm talking about, I'll leave the link to that video in the description down below. Feel free to check that out. It gives you a perfect explanation as to why you should probably never be a cart attendant at all. In fact, a lot of the reasons that I give in that video, I'm sharing here in this one. So yeah, it was just an overall miserable experience. I just never wanted to work in an area like that again. If I was ever to work in a retail job or in a supermarket again, it had to be a job indoors, because I just really did not want to be out there freezing my butt off 24/7 just to have to bring in a whole lot of carts and risk getting hurt and ultimately, causing some sort of problem or something like that. I just did not want to be a part of that experience. Obviously, if you were asking me which store I would prefer, either Stop and Shop or ShopRite, obviously I would say ShopRite, probably because of the choices that they have. But as I said before, even there, being a cart attendant is probably not fun as well. And yeah, while I will say that my overall experience at ShopRite was better than Stop and Shop, probably because I was doing it indoors and I was working as a cashier or something like that, I will tell you, I never want to have to go through the experience of having to be outdoors in the freezing cold or hot weather and have to be dealing with all the conditions that I had to go through again. Trust me, being a cart attendant is not fun, and when you're dealing with the conditions that you're going through in regards to being at the bottom of the food chain, all the weather conditions that you have to go through, and pretty much just the disrespect from management as well, trust me, it makes being a cart attendant all that worse, and especially considering that it's very, very low pay as well. Trust me, a cart attendant, it does not get any worse than this. So yeah, as I said before, my advice to all of you that are working for your first job, obviously, and are still in high school, find it in an area outside of being a card attendant. Trust me, you'll be a lot better off if you're working as a cashier, or maybe doing some stocking in stores, or maybe, somewhere around the whites of that. Trust me, you'll probably get a much better experience doing one of those jobs than being a card attendant outside in all the harsh weather conditions, because trust me, it was not fun. I have been through there, and trust me, it is just going to wear you out if you end up having that job as a card attendant. So yeah, up until Walmart 3 years ago, this would be my overall worst job experience. It's a job that I was basically forced into, and trust me, I do not want to ever have to go through anything like that ever again, because trust me, being a card attendant, it is the worst, and you'll go through a lot of misery in that job. And unfortunately, that's exactly what I did in the few months that I was there. Alright, vent time is over. I know you guys requested it for quite a long time, and so I felt like it was finally time for me to drop the hammer and do it. But anyways, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed it. As always, if you'd like to see more of my content, be sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know when my latest video is released. Comment below for future suggestions for my videos, for vlogs, projects, or challenges, you name it. Leave it in the comments below, and I'll do my best to make them. As always, follow me on my social media. All the links are in the description below. That's going to do it for this midweek upload. I hope you're having another great day. As always, I hope to see you all again in another video very soon. So long, everybody.